Hey guys, welcome back. So we're going to jump back into Photoshop, and this time we're going to have a look at the layers panel. So layers are actually really important to Photoshop. In fact, every Photoshop file is built up of lots and lots of different layers. Every time you import an image or add a piece of text or create a shape inside Photoshop, it actually adds that element to its own individual layer. And I think the thing to know about layers is that each layer can have its own adjustments applied to it. So you can change colors, you can add effects, and you can style your layers until you get your composition looking just right. So let's jump into Photoshop and let's see exactly how this all works. Okay, so here we are inside Photoshop, and the first thing I want to do is create a new document. So I'm going to head across and press the Create button and head over to my Art and Illustration tab in the launcher. And then I'm just going to go and create a 1000 pixel grid. Now, if you don't see this, put 1000 pixels in the width and 1000 pixels in the height, and then just go ahead and press Create. So one of the first things we need to do is locate where the Layers panel actually is. So if you open up Photoshop and you look at the bottom right of the screen, you should see where the Layers panel is currently residing. If you don't see this here, you might need to come up to the Window menu at the top of the screen. Come down and make sure that there's a tick next to the Layers option. If there's not, tick that and the Layers panel should pop up for you. The next thing we need to look at is how to create a new layer. Now, if you look again at the bottom of the Layers panel, you'll notice a series of icons. We need to find this one here. It's the Create New Layer icon. When I press this, you'll see it's created a new layer, and it's called Layer 1. And now I can go ahead and I can draw a shape inside this layer. So I'm going to go and do that now by coming across to my Tools panel, selecting the Rectangle tool. I'm going to draw a square inside my artboard. One of the questions I often get asked by new Photoshop users is, how do I move or transform a layer once I've actually created it? So to do that, you need to go and select the Move tool at the very top of the Tools panel. V is the shortcut key. And you need to press or tick on the Show Transform control. This is in the horizontal menu options that will show once the Move tool is selected. When I click on the square layer that I've just created in my Layers panel, or when I click the layer inside the artboard, you'll see it comes up with a series of handles around the edge of the shape. Now I can click and hold on my shape to move it around the artboard, or I can use the handles at the edge of the shape to resize or transform it. To accept any changes, I need to come and select the tick box at the top of my screen, and then to deselect the layer, I need to come up to the top of the screen and I find the Select menu and then choose Deselect Layers from this menu. So as you build out a Photoshop file, you're going to start to accumulate a lot of different layers. And as you go, it's going to be harder to find what you're looking for and navigate your Layers panel. So one of the ways to make this easier on yourself is to actually get into the habit of renaming your layers. So I'm going to come back to my Layers panel and find the layer that I've created with the square on it. It's called Rectangle 1. I'm going to double click on the label to rename this. I'm just going to rename it Square. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another 2 layers. I'm going to create a triangle and a circle, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how to reorder your layers. I'm going to come back to my Shape tool, and I'm going to select the Ellipse tool and create a circle. You'll see that it's put the circle on its own layer. Then I'm going to change the Shape tool to the Polygon tool, and I'm going to make sure my Polygon tool is set to have 3 sides. This will allow me to create my triangle. And then I'm going to draw this shape as well. You'll see it's also put the triangle on its own layer. So to tidy up, I'm going to rename my layers. I'm going to rename this one Circle, and then the top one Triangle. And we're ready to go. So I've created several new shapes inside Photoshop, but they're all the same color, so it's a little bit difficult to kind of see what's going on. So I want to go and change the color of these shapes. If you look in the Layers panel, you'll see that there's this little swatch icon at the bottom of the layer thumbnail. If I double click on this swatch icon, it will bring up a color palette and this allows me to change the color of the shape that I've selected. So as you can see, I've just changed the color of the circle to blue, and now I'm going to go do the same thing with the triangle. Double click it to bring up the color panel, and then just choose whichever color you'd like. So there you go. All my shapes now have their own colors, and it's much easier to tell them apart. Now that we've got a few layers, we're going to want to know how to reorder them. So Photoshop builds its files almost in 3D, where the bottom layer is beneath anything that comes on top of it. Now what this means as you're working in a Photoshop file is sometimes you create a new layer and it kind of blocks the visibility of the layers beneath it. Now it's very easy to reorder layers. All you need to do is click and hold a layer and then move it up and down the layers panel in order to change its order. So I'm going to change the order of my triangle layer to move it below the circle. I'm going to click and hold the triangle layer, move it to underneath the circle and then release my mouse. Now you'll see that the circle is showing both above the triangle and the square. If I wanted to move the square to the top of the layers panel, I would click and hold the square and drag it to the top of the layers panel, and then you'll see when I release my mouse, it's hidden the circle from view because it's now above that layer in the panel order. There's also a simple key command which allows you to reorder layers. You can do this by holding down the command key if you're on the Mac, or the control key if you're on a PC, and accompanying this with one of the square angle brackets. These are located just beneath the delete or backspace key on the keyboard. Because I'm on a Mac, I'm going to hold down command, and as you can see, as I'm pressing the square angle brackets, it's moving the square up and down the layers panel. Now, there's a few other things I want to show you. The first is you'll see this little eyeball shape to the very left of each layer. So you'll see as I toggle this eyeball off, it's hiding the visibility of these layers. To make them visible again, you can toggle the eyeball back on. Now, this is useful for a number of reasons, but mainly sometimes you don't want to work with all the layers on the artboard, you just want to work with specific layers. So you can hide the layers you don't want to see, make adjustments to the layers that you do, and then bring everything back for review. Sometimes when working with Photoshop layers, you can accidentally make changes you didn't mean to. To prevent this from happening, you can lock a layer. To do this, you have to select the layer you want to lock, and then you can see here there are a series of lock options. Clicking the padlock option will disable the ability for you to make any changes to that layer until you release the lock. So the last thing I want to show you before we wrap this video up is how to group layers together. Now in Photoshop, as you build your files out, you can sometimes end up working with hundreds of different layers, and this can kind of become quite difficult to navigate, so this is really useful to know. To do this, you need to select all the layers you want to group. You can do this by pressing the Command or Control key and clicking once on all the layers you want to group, or you can also hold down the Shift key and select multiple layers. Once you have them selected, come down to the bottom of the layers panel and find this icon here. It looks like a folder. Once you click that, it will take all the layers selected and group them together. The last thing I want to do here is just rename my group. I'm just going to call this Shapes. You'll notice that there's a little chevron to the left of my group, and if I toggle this chevron down, you'll see all the layers that I'd previously had selected inside this group. Now, the other trick to finding layers quickly is to color code them. If you right-click on any layer, you'll see a flyout options menu. And at the bottom of this, you'll see a series of colors. If I select green, for instance, it highlights that layer beneath the eyeball. So I can color code different layers or different groups of layers, and it makes it much easier to navigate and find what I'm looking for as I need. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit that like button below if you enjoyed the content, and it'd be really awesome if you could subscribe to the channel, so that'll help us create more content like this in the future. We'll see you in the next video.